to another intensive care at home live stream. My name is Patrick Hutzel from Intensive Care at Home and intensivecarehotline.com. Today's live stream is about evidence-based. Why do tracheostomy clients, adults and children, need ICU or pediatric ICU nurses 24 hours a day? And you will learn all about that today. Before I go into today's topic, you may want to ask why, what makes me qualified to talk about today's topic. I'm an intensive care nurse. By background, I've worked in intensive care for over 20 years in 3 different countries. I have worked with clients at intensive care at home right from the start of my nursing career, and also have set up intensive care at home successfully here in Australia for the last 10 years, worked with intensive care at home in Germany as well. I worked as a nurse unit manager in intensive care for over 5 years. So I have a broad variety in intensive care, but also intensive care at home. And I will give you all the evidence today why while a tracheostomy client at home with or without ventilation, with or without mechanical ventilation, needs an intensive care nurse 24 hours a day. Some housekeeping issues. If you have any questions regarding today's topic, type them into the chat pad below. If they're not on today's topic, you can still type them into the chat pad and I will get to them at the end of the presentation. If you have any other questions around intensive care or intensive care at home, very happy to answer them today on this call. You can also dial into the show live and answer your questions on the phone live, again at the end of today's topic. So let's dive right into it. When we first started out with intensive care at home, like 25 years ago in Germany, we were clearly pioneering a new concept that was thought of as crazy and as not being able, not having legs to stand on. It was perceived as, you can't take patients home from ICU. Well, we proved that concept pretty quickly in Germany, and like now 25 years later, it's like an industry. It's like a no-brainer that some patients in ICU, especially long-term ventilated patients with tracheostomy, can go home if they have an ICU nurse 24 hours a day. Those ICU nurses need to have a minimum of 2 years ICU or pediatric ICU experience. That's it in a nutshell. Now, as time went by, people were formalizing that and put it in a research paper, which we published on our website at intensivecareathome.com. You will find a section there, the mechanical home ventilation guidelines. And it's very important that, similar to intensive care, that standards exist in the intensive care at home world, because what we're seeing is, and we've seen that way back when in Germany, but we're also seeing it now here, there are no standards, there is no lobby, and it's a bit like the Wild West. And intensive care units can only feel safe to discharge their patients home if there are standards to avoid readmissions, to predictably keep patients at home. And that can only happen with standards. It's the same in hospitals, in ICU, that you can only operate with evidence-based approaches, and it's not any different in the community, that there need to be standards. So again, when you look at the evidence-based mechanical home ventilation guidelines on our website at intensivecareathome.com, you will find that those evidence-based guidelines clearly document that there needs to be an ICU nurse 24 hours a day, and those ICU nurses need to have a minimum of 2 years ICU experience, right? Makes perfect sense to me. If a tracheostomy patient goes into hospital or into ICU, they wouldn't have anything less but an ICU nurse looking after them. Why should it be any different in the community? So we're not going to washing down our standards in hospitals. Why would we water down our standards in the community just because there is no lobby, right? Healthcare is all about quality standards, right? So when we first started out here in Australia, again, similar to Germany 25 years ago, people thought we were crazy and it wouldn't work. Intensive care at home, you can't do that. It's not working. No one will pay for it. And, I heard all the naysayers, but that didn't stop me to set it up anyway. And now 10 years down the line, we've provided hundreds of thousands of hours of intensive care at home. And we've proved the concept with our very first client by keeping them at home instead of them living in ICU. And on top of that, obviously, by doing so, we're saving the health system about half of the cost. Intensive care at home is about half of the cost of an ICU bed, which now is probably at around $6,000 per bed day. Intensive care at home, probably is half of that. But you can't even put a monetary value on what we are doing because, our clients and our families, they want to be at home, and you can't put a monetary value on that if we can achieve that. So when we first started out here in Australia, we also saw that other providers were trying to look after ventilated and tracheostomy clients at home, which in my mind, and I have a very strong opinion there, that's a criminal act in my mind, and I feel very strongly about this, and people might say, oh, this is not politically correct. I don't care if it's not politically correct or not. In my mind, it's a criminal act if you have someone at home that's looked after by a support worker or a general registered nurse, and I just leave it there because you can't negotiate on quality standards in healthcare. You have the brain surgeon operating on the brain, you have the heart surgeon operating on the heart. You wouldn't just pick anyone off the street. It's like Qantas or any airline flying the airplane with a cabin crew instead of the pilot. It's not any different with what we are doing at intensive care at home. At the minute you have support workers or general RNs without a minimum of 2 years ICU experience coming in, clients are at risk of either dying or going back to hospital. Now, I can provide the evidence for that as well. I knew of a client here in Melbourne, in maybe 2016. A child at home was looked after with a tracheostomy by support workers and general registered nurses, and the client died. No surprises there because the airway got blocked with a seizure, a very complex child at the time. Airway got blocked with a seizure, and the medical emergency could not be managed by a support worker or by the general RNs, and the child passed away. That could have been prevented with 24/7 ICU nurses, as the mechanical home ventilation guidelines, as the evidence-based mechanical home ventilation guidelines clearly document. And those guidelines, again, are a result of now over 25 years of intensive care at home nursing in Germany, and now over the last 10 years here in Australia. Furthermore, we had 3 clients in 2020 with tracheostomies. 2 of them were not ventilated, 1 of them was ventilated. All 3 clients did not have 24-hour nursing care. And when we were starting with those clients, we were only funded for either night shifts, or we were funded for a visit twice a day for an hour. And we highlighted that to the funding body at the time, which is the NDIS here in Australia. And we clearly said to the NDIS, as well as we said it to the families, that the minute we finish our shift and we can't hand over to another ICU nurse, that their loved one's life is at risk, and that we believe medical emergencies can't be managed by families, by support workers, or by general registered nurses without ICU experience. Now, we were laughed at the time, and we were told, oh yeah, you just want to promote your business, you don't know what you're talking about, and unfortunately our predictions became a reality very quickly. All of those 3 clients that I'm referring to passed away during the daytime within a span of weeks, because medical emergency happened during the day that could not be managed by support workers, family members, or general registered nurses. And the clients passed away before the ambulances even arrived. Now that's incredibly tragic. 2 out of the 3 clients were children, right? And a government agency like the NDIS wanted to save a buck. Instead of saving lives, and it's just appalling. Now, granted, even with what we are doing, with intensive care nurses, the risk is fairly high, and we can, for us, we need to risk manage all day, every day, you know, and we are taking a reasonably high risk, but we believe we can manage that because we have the skills and the attitude of our staff that can manage that. But, you can't be negotiating on minimum qualifications in this area. You just can't, And that's basically what we're doing. We're trying to bring standards in the community for intensive care at home, making sure that also, like the NDIS, for example, can deliver on the promises they're putting out to their clients and their participants, basically saying it's about choice and control. Well, if you can't choose your skill level, you don't have choice and control. And if you can't choose your skill level that's clinically appropriate and evidence-based, clients' lives are at risk. And clients can't live independently. They can't choose how to live their life, and are at risk of dying, So, and when you look at some other providers that might look after tracheostomy clients in the community, they do it without evidence. I can't see anything on their websites that they have any evidence how they provide services, how they keep patients safe or clients safe, how they can manage tracheostomy if they're not working with intensive care nurses. There are no standards, right? And they don't even know the risk they're taking. That's my perspective. And again, we know from experience now that clients are dying if they don't have the right care, or they go back to ICU, and nobody wants to go back to ICU, do they? So it's all about predictability at home. It's all about making sure you've got the right skills at the right time. And also then from an NDIS perspective, you need to have the right funding in place to make it happen. And if you are watching this and you need funding as an NDIS participant, or for one of your loved ones that is an NDIS participant or needs NDIS funding for tracheostomy, you should be contacting us at intensivecareathome.com, and we can point you in the right direction. So that's sort of setting the scene, I would hope. And, again, it's a win-win for everyone that, we keep clients at home. We empty ICU beds, cutting the cost of an ICU bed by around half. We're enabling clients to live at home, surrounded by their families and independently. So, it's a win-win all together. And we're obviously enabling the NDIS to give their clients choice and control. So with our team of, highly skilled intensive care nurses, they all know how to look after tracheostomy. They had years of exposure in ICU, and, some of our staff have worked with us for over 5 years now, and they've had years of exposure to tracheostomy with us for many years at home. So they know what needs to be done. For some of our clients, we also do tracheostomy changes at home. We certainly do the dressing changes, inner cannula changes. Make sure clients are getting the nebulizers. Some of them use a cough assist machine. So, it's a highly specialized skill. And if you're picking people off the street to deal with intensive care patients at home, which is what the NDIS wants to do, or other funding bodies as well, it's just a recipe for disaster. And if you're not following evidence-based, it's an absolute recipe for disaster. And I can only appeal to the NDIS in particular not to ignore the evidence and not just look at the budget, but look at what people need clinically. If they go back to hospital, they would have an intensive care nurse, full stop. Why would they not get an intensive care nurse at home? What's the difference? What's the difference? Anyway, so that's sort of the framework around it. And also we have, a quality manual where we have policies and procedures, how our nurses look after, the tracheostomies and the ventilation at home, so that it's all within safe guidelines, Now, so that is our area of expertise. It's our strength. It's, you know, it's unique that nobody else, I believe, is delivering on evidence-based intensive care at home or has accreditation like we do have. We have third-party accreditation through the NDIS as well as through ISO 9001 for intensive care at home. It's a unique intellectual property that we have built, and I don't believe that anybody else has been able to replicate that or has been able to achieve this accreditation, which we've achieved for the last 10 years every year. So I hope that helps in understanding how we provide services, you know, and why we believe our clients are safe and why we believe we have the capacity and the skills to take people home from intensive care directly. You know, we employ hundreds of years of ICU and pediatric ICU nursing experience. Again, I don't think that any other organization is able to send that many years of ICU nursing experience in the community. It's unique. It's a unique value proposition that we have for our clients, for our families, but also for the NDIS and for hospitals and for doctors as well. So I hope that helps. Now, I am open now for questions. If there are any questions, please type them into the chat pad now, or you can also call in live on the show. You can call in if you are in Australia. You can call in on 041 094 2230. That is again Australia 041 094 2230. If you are in the US, you can call 415 915 0090. That is again 415 915 0090. If you're in the UK, you can call on 0118 324 3018. That is again 0118 324 3018. Or type your questions into the chat pad. While I'm waiting for your questions or waiting for your phone calls, I will put a link below this video to the mechanical home ventilation guidelines. Now, what we're also doing at the moment is we are in the process to hire an NDIS specialist support coordinator that will help us advocate for our clients for the right funding, because once again, we have found that some of our clients not getting the right funding keeps them in hospitals or in ICU for much longer. And if they then do go home with no funding for the ICU nurse, it puts them back into hospital, it puts their life at risk. You know, we know of so many clients beyond the clients that we've been involved with that have passed away at home because they didn't have the ICU nurse 24 hours a day, and it's simply not safe. It costs life, and it's a very short-term approach from the NDIS or from any other funding body, not acknowledging the intensive care nursing needs clients have at home to keep them at home safely. So there's a caller coming in. I think that might be Helene. Is that you?
Yes, Patrick. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. Getting a little cold, so I use my voice in this, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to call. I was reading, I just remembered that my mom, this was after she had, my late mother, had got out of the hospital. She had suffered hypoxic encephalopathy, permanent brain injury while she was in the hospital, which the hospital tried to cover up. And I took her to a neurologist, and he gave her a Xanax, one pill, to help her to be calm while she went through getting a CAT scan. And after she took the pill, it stayed in her system. I think it was done on August the 17th, August the 17th, and it stayed in her system to the 19th that I had to rush her to the hospital because she was not able to breathe the carbon dioxide out of her lungs. Um, and I did not know how strong that pill was for her.
What was the
And
pill again, Helene? What was the pill again?
Xanax.
Xanax.
I think it's Xanax. Yes. He gave it to her so she'll be calm and and relaxed, going through for the CAT scan of her brain. And it was given to her August the 17th, and it stayed in her system that I had to rush her to the hospital on the 19th because my mom stopped breathing, or she was having heart failure. I don't know what was going on. Unfortunately, intake nurse was just coming to see her, and she helped me with mom, and we called 911, and the ambulance took her to the hospital, and they had to put her on a bypass machine, and fortunately, that evening she was able to come off of it, but they kept her in ICU overnight for observation. The unfortunate part about it, none of my mother's doctors would talk to me. They put in the medical records that I was nowhere to be found, which was not true. I did get there later, but once I got there, I did ask to speak to the pulmonologist or the ER doctor, but neither will come and speak with me to let me know what was going on with my mom. And then the next day, they discharged her, and it was an unsafe discharge because I found out later, once I got the medical records, she had sepsis, I believe, and she had there was something MRSA. I think she had MRSA.
MRSA?
Definitely had MRSA, yeah. And they had her on what is it called, fentanyl patches. And I'm learning more about how dangerous that pill can be, where even people, on the streets who take fentanyl, it's hard for them to be weaned off. And my mother was 84 years old. There was no way she could have been weaned off that patch. She had to get it, had it replaced every 72 hours. And that's the pill they gave. That's the patch they gave her. Remember when I told you about the misuse and overuse of the bypass machine, where they had her on restraints and she tried to break her loose and chew a piece of the face mask, the mouth that went around the mouth and the nose. And through the night, she chewed a piece of it off, and it was blown down her throat and cut her throat, her esophagus, and it was bleeding, and they never retrieved it.
Right.
And they would not even do an incident report on it. My mom ended up getting septic shock in that hospital. Okay. And also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You've just maybe coming back to the Xanax, which is alprazolam. Do you know how much she had of that drug? Have you got a dose?
It was just one pill. It was just one pill.
Yeah,
but
it depends. One pill might be 5 milligrams. It might be 10 milligrams. It might be 20 milligrams.
It may have been 5 milligrams, but she had such a weak immune system at that point, and she was very fragile. Very fragile. That pill was too strong for her.
In combination with fentanyl, it almost sounds to me like they might have knocked her out.
It did knock her out. It did. And the carbon dioxide had built back up in her lungs. Again, like it did back in January the 7th from being given the wrong antibiotic for pneumonia. This doctor gave her Cefnir antibiotic. I think it's CENFIR versus a Z-Pack. And Cefnir has the same chemical makeup as penicillin, and she was allergic to it. But she suffered allergic reaction. That's how she ended up at this particular hospital. and from the carbon dioxide being built up in her lungs.
Too high.
And the doctor, pardon me?
And the alprazolam, just to, I don't know how much, the Xanax, I don't know how much research you've done. It's basically a tranquilizer.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, with the fentanyl too, and he knew she, all fentanyl passes, it was just way too much. I mean, she had lost so much weight when she was in the hospital, you know, and she was just frail. I mean, and she had gone through so much oxygenic malfeasance abuse. And, you know, like, it was like she was always exploited, you know, and like I shared with you in our first company, she was forced on the ventilator. It wasn't, you know, from some kind of injury I mean, the injuries happened to her in the hospital that put her on the ventilators. So, you know, as I shared with you, one of the driving factors was excessive fluid overload that caused her to have sudden edema, congestive heart failure, which she couldn't breathe, and they were giving her all kinds of narcotics, which they would not tell me what they were giving her. And it was infiltrating her lungs, and she couldn't breathe. So she was being medically exploited, you know. And I saw this as a pattern from 2012, October the 1st of 2012, all the way to time she died, August the 27th of 2016. I saw this as a pattern at different hospitals.
Wow.
You know, so, and like you had said, the nurses that work with your company, they have at least 2 years experience. Well, at this particular hospital where she was in, they had her on the bypass machine for over 72 hours, no food, no water, no rest, and she was allegedly diabetic, you know, and I know you said, you know, you have to weigh the risk, but they were giving her excessive fluid overload, and also the fact that she had a chronic arch that came from the as a medical injury back in 2012, and this was 2016. And like when COVID came out, I started learning. You know, that was the first time I really learned about what arch really was. And I was told that if you have somebody who has arch and you're giving them excessive fluid overload and you're blowing up that vent, it's like, you know, air to their lungs, it's like they're hitting a brick wall. You know, that's quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what they were doing to her, and that's why I said my mother was medically tortured too. This was not the standard of care. This is not the, you know, like you were saying, you know, there's evidence-based when you have a stand, you know, and because you have standards and guidelines that you use at home. But at this hospital, it was like anything goes. It was, and you like you mentioned the Wild Wild West. Those was my exact words. Those are, you know, what was happening to my mom. It was just whatever went on, whatever they wanted to do, they did it. You know, and some of the, and they would she ended up at this hospital for 3 months. It had to be January the 7th through March the 28th, and then there was an emergency. I had to do an emergency appeal to get her out of there, and they got her to LTAC, who also concealed the damages. But before I go there to that hospital or that LTAC, they had nurses coming in that was still in nursing school working with patients in ICU, like a visit. I mean, I can understand nurses maybe touring ICU, but really hands-on, that was, and sometimes not even guided or, you know, by someone else or oversight of a trained nurse, they were allowing that to happen. And some of them were fresh out of, now on other occasions, they were some straight out of nursing school, working
For sure.
by themselves in ICU. And that just really
It's dangerous.
alarming.
It's dangerous. And this has always
Very
been an issue in healthcare. You know, how do you integrate junior staff, whether it's doctors, nurses? You know, you put them through training programs, but you know, you still have to learn on the job. And with COVID, that's become worse, not better. You know, it was challenging before COVID. Some of the staffing levels in ICU were pretty low with a lot of junior staff. You know, it has become worse.
Yeah. And at this particular hospital, Patrick, they had no standard for sanitizing equipment or hospital beds. I mean, they gave my mother a bed that a patient had just used. And my mother ended up getting hepatitis C in the hospital as well as first. So they did not wash it down or anything. And I'm like, don't you supposed to sanitize this bed before you put her on it? We don't have the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that was no standard. And you know, like the ports for to draw blood, the IV ports, you're supposed to, wipe them down with alcohol swab.
Yeah.
And replace the top. The top. They wouldn't even have. This hospital didn't even have the alcohol swabs to wipe those outside ports off. And I fortunately had some in my car that I just got a new shipment in of supplies for my mom, and they had to use her personal supplies because I'm like, they had none.
Yeah.
None. And then like the green tops that they had supposed to screw on there to protect it,
Yeah.
they wouldn't even replace them at times.
Yeah.
Either they leave it open or just reuse they kept reusing the old one.
Yeah. Yeah. Helen, I've got another caller. wanting to ask some questions. No, that's okay. That's okay. It's all good. I gotta let another caller in. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you so much for sharing your, I know it's been very sad with your mom in particular. And I appreciate that you are sharing this so freely with everyone here, because I think it's important that everyone is hearing it, that they need to be very vigilant while they have a family member in ICU. That people have to be vigilant as soon as they go in. Thanks, Helen, for sharing. I'll just let another caller in. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So, Teresa, I'm just going to call you now. I know you tried to call.
Hello?
Hi, Teresa. It's Patrick here. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, Patrick.
That's good. You're live now. Sorry that I couldn't.
Oh, okay.
Well, I've seen your emails. So I have an up-to-date, update from your end. What's your burning question now?
What I'm trying to find out, because my dad, they capped him on Tuesday, and he hasn't defatted or anything. They were actually going to decannulate him on Thursday, but he's got mental confusion that's developed now. So they felt that it was safe to, still keep it in. But other than just the confusion part, he's doing well. And the LTAC wants to maybe discharge him on Tuesday. They wanted to go to a skilled nursing or a subacute facility, but my mom has home health care, and so she wants to bring him home. So I was just trying to see, what our next steps should be, as far as safety.
Yep.
If they do decannulate him before we go home, if that was better, or
I think.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I think I have a fairly simple answer for you there. Whilst confusion is not great, my advice would be to decannulate him while he's in a hospital environment and see how he goes, because he's in the right place, that if something was to go wrong, that they could recannulate him. but now is the time to decannulate him. When you say confused, what can you describe that a little bit more?
Yeah, well, the last couple of days, he's been confused and hallucinating, saying there's rats running around the ceiling and the vents are going to fall on me and people are crawling around on the floor.
So,
He's
but
more confused when you talk to him. He
right,
mumbles and just goes off on weird things.
okay, but he's talking to you with a speaking valve.
Yes, they have a
Great,
speaking cap on.
fantastic, fantastic. So, as far as I can see, there's way more positives than negatives. You know, I mean, confusion
Yeah,
has,
we're doing much better.
Right, right. You know, the most important thing from my perspective is you take out the trach. You know, can he follow commands like, you know, can he keep coughing? Can he do deep breathing exercises? You know, it doesn't sound to me like that would be an obstacle. Or do you think that might be an obstacle, that he can't follow those instructions around breathing exercises, coughing?
No, he totally will do everything we ask him to do. He cooperates. He's, understanding commands very good. I was just looking at the doctor's notes that I just got, and they have him as acute respiratory failure, and then it has a NSPW, which I'm not sure, but unspecified or maybe, but it says hypoxia or hypercapnia.
And did you say NSPW?
UNSPW.
UNSPW. Never heard of that. I'll just quickly type it into Google and see what comes up.
Yeah.
Never heard of this.
Sure.
Medical. Interesting. But you know, it sounds to me like what he's experiencing. Nothing seems to come up. Nothing seems to come up.
Maybe UNSP space W?
P space W? Yeah.
Yeah, P space. Yeah, I don't know. But he has hypoxia or hypercapnia.
Right. No, nothing comes up that's of significance under that. That's strange. But I think from what you're describing here, you know, the issues are not so much around the airway. The issue are more around mental, you know, like hallucination, confusion. Now, correct me if you think I'm making the wrong suggestion here. Once he has the trach removed, him going home is something that can be achieved reasonably quickly. Would you confirm that?
Yes.
Okay. So
We can
so I argue that once he's in his own environment, I would argue that the confusion will take care of itself, because, you know, how long has he been in hospital now? For months on end.
106 days.
Right. I would think that him going home would deal with that confusion, don't you think? Or what's your outlook?
I totally agree. Totally. But they're trying to push now to move to a convalescent, skilled nursing, or a subacute, and I keep explaining we're not getting any better by just moving him around different facilities. That's just creating his confusion to get worse.
Now,
and they haven't done any physical therapy, and it's just frustrating because these facilities, they sell you all of this and say they're great, and then you get in there and it's totally the opposite. It's like a used car salesman. So
now,
that's why we just decided we can bring him home. It's going to probably be better.
Now is the time. It sounds to me like you've got a unique window of opportunity here, and I believe you need to capitalize on that. Let's just quickly check another couple of things. He's coughing.
Yes, he does cough, and he's coughing up hard, and then a lot of times he'll just swallow it back down, but it's not. It's going down the right tube.
Fantastic.
He hasn't been aspirating.
Fantastic. The cannula is deflated. Do you know? Great.
And they actually, what they had to do was they had to change his trach size because it was an XLT, because they tried to cap him with the XLT and he couldn't do it. So then they changed it from an 8 to a 7, and he's been able to tolerate it much better since they made the trach smaller now.
How long ago was it when they downsized it?
Last Sunday.
Okay, so a week. Great. And he's been tolerating that really well.
Yes, and then they totally capped him on Tuesday at 2:30, and he hasn't had any need to have any oxygen or no suctioning or anything.
Fantastic. Is he starting to eat and drink?
Yes, they removed the NG tube from him, and he's been on pureed foods, which he eats a lot of the puree. We tried him on the mechanical, but he can't tolerate the mechanical. He like chews on it forever, and then most of the time he just spits it out.
Fantastic.
So we've asked us to put the puree back.
That is fantastic. I mean, it's almost like now or never.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
we thought too.
That doesn't make any sense that they would want to send him to another facility. Again, that's just, in my mind, that's just as insane as leaving ICU. Now sending that just does not make any sense to me whatsoever.
Welcome to the United States.
It's our system here isn't perfect either. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But that sounds.
So you're suggesting that we try to get him to decannulate before we.
100%. So here is what I'm suggesting. They should take the cannula out. He's in the right place to have that monitored, right? God forbid it doesn't go right. Well, he's in the right place to have that rectified if it doesn't go in the right direction. If it does go in the right direction, I'd say another 48, 72 hours max. Go home.
Okay. So you're thinking 2 to 3 days after we decannulate, then we should be good.
Unless there is something else that we're not aware of. I did see his hemoglobin was a little bit low, but you know, they wouldn't transfuse him below a 7 anyway. Right? But again, you know, stuff like, I would imagine he's not getting any natural daylight. You know, when he's back home, I would hope, you know, I'm sure he's getting some fresh air, and you know, I think this is stuff that will take care of itself once he's in a conducive environment.
Oh yeah, and he keeps saying that, and he's seen my mom driving through the parking lot in his truck yesterday, and he got all excited and wanted me to, because I had him in the wheelchair, and he wanted me to push him outside in the parking lot so he can get in the truck and go home.
Look. I mean, obviously that's stuff that's exciting for him. Going to another facility won't be exciting for him.
Yeah. And they're just wanting to push for that because of the physical therapy, because this OPAC has not given him any physical therapy. We've been there, I think, like 25 days, and he may have had 4 physical therapies.
That's shocking.
It's horrible. We're going on day 11 as of Monday, has no physical therapy.
That's shocking.
You know.
And sort of where is he at in regards to his mobility? Where is he at?
The occupation therapy was able to get him to do a slide board from the bed to the wheelchair. It's still people because he's a very large man, but he was able to. His upper body is very strong. He's been trying to stand when physical therapy did come in with the bars, the parallel bars, and the therapist, you know, obviously trying to hold him up. His lower legs are very, very weak.
Sure.
The upper body's very strong. So my brother and I and my mom constantly through the day, we're working, trying to do exercises with them, doing leg kicks and all that. We're doing our own physical therapy. That was the other reason why we were like, we might as well just take him home, because we're doing all of his bed care. The only thing we're not doing is giving meds. We're doing everything else.
So the question is, do you feel confident taking him home and continue working on his physical rehab? That's probably the question that you need to ask yourself. But I guess from a mental health point of view, he can't wait to go home, really, can he?
No, he is. That's the never. And as far, my mom, like I said, has really good home health. They said that they will have physical therapy out 2 to 3 times a week, occupation either 2 to 3 times. It varies, but it would be more consistent to obviously what we're getting. Plus, I have prior experience. My husband passed away 7 years of gastric bypass due to malabsorption, which he was a very large man. And so, we had him at home and we took care of him until he passed. So we're fairly well known of how to take care of, our large people and all of that. My mom's really been working hard on the bed sores. They're still really bad, but they're nowhere as bad as what they were. The wound care nurse even told my mom, she just let my mom take over with the wound care because their stuff wasn't working and my mom did, so she said just keep doing it. So we're even doing the wound care.
Sounds to me like you're halfway there. I think the worst thing that you can do is by not capitalizing on what's working. What's working is, you can, it sounds to me like that trach is ready to come out. Is that other place that, is the other place where he's supposed to be going to, are they affiliated with this place?
No, they're not affiliated. It's just a different facility that they quote unquote can offer more physical therapy. The LTAC he's at right now was their specialty was weaning off the vent, which they did, and weaning off the NG2, which they did. But, we also were promised physical therapy. We were promised after he left this LTAC that he would be strong enough and ready to go straight discharge to home. But we found out that their physical therapy people all quit, so they don't have a physical therapist. So, unfortunately, all these patients are laying there not getting physical therapy because of their staff shortage, which isn't our fault and it's not theirs, but my dad's the one that suffered. If we could have had the physical therapy going all this time, he would have been ready to be straight home, probably being able to walk into the house,
Yeah.
But I think we can do it.
It sounds to me like if you're not taking out the trach now, he would be going to a new team. It sounds to me like you've taken 2/3 of the journey, and if you feel confident that you can take that last part of the journey at home without the trach, obviously, then I think you're
that's
good.
That's a big thing. Huh?
That's the biggest one.
Now, if we had to bring him home with the trach, does that make things more complicated?
Definitely. I don't know whether you saw the beginning of today's presentation. I would be
I missed the first
right. The today's
so I'll go back and watch it.
Right, that's okay. The today's presentation was really about why someone at home with a trach needs 24-hour qualified nursing with ICU nurses, because unfortunately, we've had patients die at home because they didn't have the 24/7 with a critical care nurse, right? That was today's presentation. Yeah. So I think you are now in a unique position to get that trach out while he's in the right place. They can take it out, monitor it for a couple of days, and then go home.
Okay, sounds good. Like a plan for me.
Yeah.
The best news we've heard in 105 days.
Well,
what I've been through.
It's great. It's great. I mean, that's fantastic news.
Yep, all this hard work and all of your support and all of your nursing support. I can't imagine how I get through it without you guys. And if I ever hear anyone that is ever in an ICU, you will be the first person I tell they need to contact, because you guys have helped out so much. It's just amazing. All of the secrets that they don't want to tell you, and how you can stand up to them and you can, take them on. They don't control you, you control them. All of that. I totally appreciate all of that.
No, thank you so much for those kind words. That's what we're here for. That's all we want to do. We want to help people, because I know it's a terrible journey. It's a terrible journey that no one should go through by themselves. It's You know, some people are able to manage it, but very few people are.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because, well, they don't know.
That's
You know,
right.
they don't know, or they don't have the encouragement to be able to take them head on and know that they have that right. You know, that's the unfortunate thing, because I was able to help another person at the first hospital my dad was at that was starting to go through the exact same things that we were, you know, not letting them have a support person during the night and all that. And I emailed her my letters, and I was like, these are civil and state laws. You know, he can't talk. You can be there for him, and so she gave it to him, and the letter worked. So I told everybody, if my dad gets better, I'm gonna be sitting in front of across the street from that hospital. If anybody needs help, come see me. It's just not fair. These hospitals, they have too much control.
They have too much.
Many people are dying because of it.
Yeah. Now this is fantastic. This is fantastic news. I really hope that the hospital there now, or the LTAC, will support you in your request in taking out the tube.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah,
that I think
I'll
that
bring up.
that should be your main focus.
Should we wait? Because they're saying they want to wait to decannulate until his confusion gets better.
Look,
And that's
look.
should we? I mean, it has been, but
Look, is it riskier taking out a tracheostomy tube on someone that's confused versus someone that's not confused? The answer is probably yes. There is a higher risk. I would say especially overnight. Right?
yeah.
I have seen, when I worked in ICU, I have seen, you know, you take a tube out during the day and everything is fine, and then overnight there's a higher chance that people might get confused overnight. It sounds to me like your dad is confused day and night. Yes, there is definitely a risk, but it sounds to me like the risk of him going to another place now is probably higher than them not giving it a go.
Yeah, and the other good thing too is I was able to fight against this hospital to allow my mom to get overnight stays. Because at first they refused me, and I kept on him, and I kept on him, and then finally they said, okay, fine, she can stay. And ever since, my mom's been able to stay during the night. He does not need to be restrained. He hasn't needed to be over medicated, and that's also helped a lot. So yeah, it's a 24/7 definitely care, but I mean, we're seeing progress, and he's doing great. So that's the best news, like I said, since May 28th.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. This is amazing news, but I really think, look, it is a higher risk, of course. It would help if your dad wasn't confused, but not trying, you got to weigh up, but it sounds to me like you're halfway there, more than halfway there.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's time.
I think it's time. I tell you what they may want to focus on. Let's just say they take out the tube. Maybe keep him nil by mouth for 24 hours. You know, and that is hard because, you know, he'll probably feel very thirsty. You know, but maybe manage that with some mouth swabs or with some crushed ice. You know, but one of the biggest risks is probably aspiration risk in the first 24 hours.
Oh, okay.
Right? Right.
Okay.
So that would be my recommendation. Keep him nil by mouth for the first 24 hours. It'd probably be hard for him.
Okay.
Right, but you know, you can manage that with maybe brushing his teeth or using some mouth swabs or some crushed ice. So, you know, so he doesn't feel like he's not getting anything at all. But that you know, and I'm sure they have some recommendations there as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Patrick. Well, I look forward to, you know, keeping you updated, and I can't thank you enough, and all of your nursing staff, everyone has been awesome.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate.
I give you guys a big hug.
I really appreciate sharing this, and all the best. Take those last steps. All the best. Thank you for sharing.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
evening.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thank you, Helene, and thank you, Teresa, for contributing today. That's been great. So I'm going to wrap this up for today. If you have a loved one in intensive care, go and check out intensivecarehotline.com. Call us on one of the numbers on the top of our website, or send us an email to support@intensivecarehotline.com. If you have a loved one in intensive care and you want to go home with intensive care at home, contact us at intensivecareathome.com. Again, call us on one of the numbers on the top of our website, or send us an email to info@intensivecareathome.com. If you are in Australia specifically, if you need NDIS funding for intensive care at home, please contact us. We can help you with all of that. If you are at home already and you don't have enough support for someone on a ventilator, tracheostomy, home TPN, you should contact us as well at intensivecareathome.com. Go and check out our membership for families in intensive care at intensivecaresupport.org. If you need a medical record review for your loved one in ICU or after ICU, please contact us as well. I would appreciate if you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel for regular updates for families in intensive care and intensive care at home. Comment below what you want to see next or what questions and insights you have. Click the notification bell. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in another YouTube live stream next Sunday, 10:30 a.m. Sydney, Melbourne time, which is 8:30 p.m. Eastern time in the US. I'll look forward to seeing you then. Thank you so much and have a wonderful Saturday and Sunday. Thank you.